Ever get a little thrill thinking your toddler's first bank account could actually be their secret weapon in retirement? Or maybe you've wondered if that extra scoop of ice cream is doing more damage to your memory than just, your waistline.
It's fascinating how the spreads of our GFR, like how we save, what we eat, are so tied into these bigger economic, societal things.
Welcome to the deep dive. Think of us as your shortcut through that huge pile of information out there, kind of like the curated insights you'd find on consumers.app.
Right.
We've been digging through their Consumers 360 commentary from today, April 27th, 2025, and honestly, there's some really eye-opening stuff.
Today we're going to touch on some pretty unexpected financial moves for the really young.
Yeah.
Plus the always changing world of retirement planning.
Always.
How global trade stuff affects your local grocery store, and even the surprising ways remote work is changing how we spend money, and more.
Our goal here is basically to pull out what really matters from all this noise and maybe give you a fresh way to think about it.
Let's jump in.
Okay, let's dive right in with a headline that honestly made me do a double take. This is from Fool UK on MSN.com. Why opening a SIPP for a baby may be a brilliant move.
For a baby.
Right. Now, a SIPP, based on what we found, is a self-invested personal pension.
Okay.
Think of it like your own personal retirement pot where you've got a lot of say in where the money goes, stocks, bonds, maybe even property.
More control than usual then.
Exactly. It's different from a typical company pension because of that flexibility, and it comes with some pretty nice tax perks.
And that's where the baby angle gets really interesting, right? The long-term view.
Yeah.
The research points out the real magic is the decades it has to grow, completely tax-free.
Decades.
That's the power of compound interest over a really long time. Even tiny, regular contributions early on.
Yeah.
They can just snowball into something huge later.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the money growing, is it? There was that research, Sushmita Kumari and Siddharth Gavhal.
Oh, right. I saw that.
Yeah, it suggests this kind of early planning, it actually helps families manage their whole financial picture more strategically.
Balancing things out.
Right. Balancing current needs with thinking about the kids' future security, like, say, education costs down the road.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, there are those immediate tax advantages too. Contributions get income tax relief at your highest rate. Then the growth inside the pension, tax-free.
That's huge.
Plus it's treated well for inheritance tax if, something happens before age 75. It really does stack up as a compelling strategy for long-term planning.
It's pretty amazing when you look back at how pensions have changed. Research gives this quick history lesson, starting with the old age pension in the UK way back in 1909.
Very basic back then.
Super basic. And now we have these really flexible things like SIPPs. It just shows how much retirement planning has evolved. So for you listening, have you ever thought about giving the kids or grandkids a financial head start, like almost from birth?
And that raises a key question, doesn't it? How does this super early saving fit into everything else a family needs to budget for?
Right, the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah. Research stresses you got to integrate these long-term investments with your regular budget, other goals, to really make the most of your resources.
Okay, good point. Now, let's switch gears to something that's probably top of mind for current retirees. The Social Security Cost of Living Adjustment, COLA.
Yes, COA, always a big topic.
AOL has a headline today, Social Security TLA Forecast. Here's the good and bad news for retirees. So COA, as the research explains, is that yearly bump in Social Security benefits meant to keep pace with inflation.
Keeping purchasing power level.
Exactly. And it's based on this index, the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. Bit of a mouthful.
CPIW, yeah. Basically, how much costs are rising for typical workers?
But it's crucial for retirees, right? It helps their fixed incomes actually buy the same amount of stuff as prices go up.
Absolutely vital. But there's a but. The research also points to this major challenge, the Social Security Trust Fund. It's projected to potentially run dry by, 2033?
Wow, 2033. That's not far off.
That's far, if changes aren't made.
Yeah, higher inflation means a bigger COLA.
Correct, to help people keep up. But those underlying funding problems, they're serious.
Yeah.
And they could lead to Congress stepping in, maybe changing the payroll tax cap or how benefits are calculated. It's a system under real pressure.
And it's interesting, too. Not everyone in the U.S. is covered by Social Security. Something like 28% of state and local government workers, they have their own pension plans.
Right. Different systems running in parallel.
It really shows the different approaches to retirement security. So for you thinking about your own retirement, are you factoring in these, bigger economic shifts, potential changes to Social Security?
Which really brings up the need for, adaptable retirement strategies. There's a Kiplinger headline today, How to Make Changing Interest Rates Work for Your Retirement.
Timely.
Very. Research explains how interest rates directly hit your retirement portfolio. Think bonds, savings accounts.
So higher rates are good for new money going in, but bad for old bonds.
Kind of, yeah. Higher rates boost returns on new interest-bearing stuff, but they can lower the market value of older bonds you already hold that have lower rates.
Yeah.
And vice versa, if rates fall. It means you need to be flexible in how your money's allocated.
Right. You can't just set it and forget it. And what about those simulations? Monte Carlo. Sounds like something out of Vegas.
Hey, yeah, it sounds fancy, but it's a planning tool.
Yeah.
Basically, it runs thousands of what-if scenarios for the future, changing interest rates, inflation, all that.
To see how your plan holds up.
Exactly. It stress tests your retirement plan against different possibilities. Helps you see potential outcomes.
And inflation. That's the other big one, right? It just eats away at savings over time, especially in things like 401k.
It absolutely does. Slowly erodes your purchasing power. That's why things like inflation-linked bonds can be useful. They're designed to help protect your savings from that value loss.
It's wild to think, though, that formal retirement systems have been around for so long. Germany started way back in 1889.
Yeah, they were the first with state benefits. And now the right to some kind of pension is actually written into the constitutions of many Western countries.
Wow. But even with these systems, things can get rocky. Like that stock market dip in 2022, that really highlighted why you need flexible strategies, right?
Absolutely. Retirement planning isn't a one-and-done thing. It needs constant attention, adjustments, and other economic factors matter too, like unemployment rates.
Yeah.
That could affect when people decide to retire or how much they save.
Yeah, and recent research even digs into that balance between wanting to retire and having enough income to actually feel okay doing it. It's a very personal thing for everyone.
It is.
So for you planning retirement, are you actively thinking about how these economic shifts, these interest rate changes, might impact your long-term security?
Okay, let's pivot now. Something that might impact your next holiday shopping. Well, souvenir shopping anyway.
Oh.
The Daily Mail has this headline. As we're banned from bringing meat and cheese home from EU, how to savor Britain's best deli delights, including Kate and William's favorite cheese.
Ah, the cheese ban. I heard about this, so it's real.
Seems so. Research confirms the UK government has put stricter rules in place. You can't bring in most meat and dairy from the EU as a traveler. It's mainly about preventing animal diseases.
Right. So packing your suitcase with French brie is probably not a good idea anymore.
Probably not. A bit of a bummer for foodies, for sure.
So what happens now? Do UK supermarkets just fill the gap?
Well, the thinking is they'll likely respond by sourcing more local British stuff, which could be good for UK producers.
Makes sense.
And they'll also look for alternative imports from countries that do meet the new rules.
And technology plays a role here too, doesn't it? Behind the scenes.
Oh, definitely. Research talks about these modern traceability technologies in supermarket supply chains.
Tracking food from farm to shelf?
Pretty much. It helps with food safety, managing recalls if needed, and even verifying things like sustainable farming practices.
And the Internet of Things, IoT, that's involved too.
Yeah, think interconnected devices. They help improve security and reliability in supply chains through better monitoring, tracking, data collection.
Of course, all these rules and global shifts, they end up affecting prices, right? What we pay at the checkout.
For sure. Research mentions how retail inflation can change how we shop. Maybe we look for more value, cheaper alternatives.
And other costs feed in too, like minimum wage increases. Businesses pass those on.
Often, yeah. Higher labor costs can lead to higher prices in supermarkets, both retail and wholesale.
So supermarkets really need to stay on their toes.
They do. They need strategies to handle these supply chain disruptions from rule changes, things like having more diverse suppliers, investing in technology to be more efficient, maybe predict problems.
So for you listening, especially if you travel, will this EU import ban change what you bring back? And maybe more broadly, how much do you think about how global rules affect the food that shows up in your local store?
Okay, now let's think about where a lot of us are actually doing the work that buys those groceries, working from home.
The remote work revolution. Still ongoing.
Retail Insider has this headline. Canada leads in remote work, reshaping food, spending, and productivity.
Canada leads. Interesting. How has it changed things there?
Well, one big thing is travel patterns. Research shows shorter commutes, obviously, but also more travel during off-peak times and maybe more use of sustainable transport.
But it's not all smooth sailing, right? Communication can be tricky.
Yeah, that's a point raised in the research. Implementing certain work processes, like agile methods, in remote-first companies in Canada, it can create challenges for team relationships, building trust.
Finding new ways to connect.
Exactly. Adapting communication styles is key.
And it's changed how people spend money, too. More online groceries.
A noticeable increase there. And also people seem to be more price sensitive. Makes sense if you're home more, cooking more, maybe watching the budget a bit closer.
What about work-life balance? Is it better or worse?
It's mixed, according to the research for Canadian workers. Flexibility is great, no commute, huge pluses. But those lines between work and home can get blurry. Some people feel isolated. And productivity. It seems to vary a lot depending on the job, the industry.
And this shift is actually pushing retailers to innovate. Faster digital stuff.
Yeah, it's accelerated things like e-commerce platforms, contactless payments. Retailers have had to adapt fast to reach people who are now mostly at home.
And the government's paying attention.
Canadian policymakers are. They're focusing on things like better digital infrastructure, cybersecurity, workforce training to support this remote environment.
So pros and cons for companies too, I guess. Lower overheads, bigger talent pool.
Definitely benefits. But also those potential drawbacks, communication hurdles, keeping the team feeling cohesive, building trust when you're not face-to-face.
So even if you're not in Canada, are you seeing these kinds of remote work trends affect your own job, maybe your spending habits?
Let's move on to something really vital. Food accessibility. Spyam on MSN.com asks, what foods can you buy on Amazon with your EBT card?
Okay, so this is about the SNP program, right? Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program.
Exactly. And interestingly, research mentioned a recent study suggesting that news coverage about SNP often leans negative, especially for more partisan sources.
That's concerning because these programs are so important, especially like during the pandemic.
Absolutely critical. Research highlighted how COVID made nutritional health gaps even worse for low-income women, underscoring just how crucial SNP is. There are even some innovative policy ideas being floated to improve food distribution based on need.
So back to Amazon and EBT. What can people buy?
Generally, it's the basics: groceries, produce, dairy, meat, pantry staples, things like that.
But not like ready-made meals or alcohol.
No, non-food items, alcohol, hot prepared foods are usually excluded. The focus is on essential food items for preparing meals at home.
And having Amazon accept SNAP, that must help a lot of people, especially if getting to a store is hard.
Definitely. It's improved access significantly for many families, particularly those in food deserts, with few nearby stores or people with mobility challenges.
But there are still hurdles, like internet access or delivery fees.
Yes, those remain real challenges for some beneficiaries shopping online. Access to reliable internet isn't universal, and delivery fees can add up.
And community support is still key, right? Public health efforts.
Hugely important. Especially during economic downturns, those local supports and public health measures are vital for SNP recipients.
Okay, shifting focus slightly within food. Let's talk nutrition. Vogue has a piece, When to Eat Dried Fruits and Nuts to Maximize Health Benefits.
Good snacking options.
Generally, yes. Research confirms nuts and dried fruits are great sources of fiber, vitamins, minerals, good for heart health, maybe even weight management.
And the timing matters.
Apparently so. One interesting point from the research, eating nuts before a high-carb meal might help reduce the blood sugar spike afterward.
Okay. Good tip. And how are these fruits actually dried?
Well, there are traditional ways like sun-drying and then more modern methods like industrial dehydrators or even freeze-drying.
Right. And there was that study from Australia about produced prescriptions.
Yes, a 2025 study. It found that programs prescribing fruits, veggies, whole grains, and nuts actually helped adults with type 2 diabetes improve their blood sugar control.
That's really compelling evidence for using food as medicine.
Isn't it? And we know the common dried fruits, raisins, dates, prunes, figs.
Staples. And studies also back up the idea that regularly eating nuts helps with blood sugar management in type 2 diabetes.
So overall, they're a good way to get essential nutrients, and they make for convenient, healthy snacks.
Definitely part of a balanced diet. So are you thinking more now about when you grab that handful of almonds or dried apricots?
Makes you think. Okay, now for a less cheerful, but maybe equally important, food headline from New Atlas. Junk food makes you dumber in a very specific way.
Oof. Doesn't pull any punches, that headline.
Not at all. And the research gets specific. Diets high in junk foods seem to negatively affect cognitive functions like memory, learning, attention.
What's the mechanism?
It might be due to inflammation in the hippocampus. That's a key brain area for memory, and messing with neurotransmitter regulation, the brain's chemical messengers.
And what about those foods that are just too tasty?
Yeah.
Hyper palatable.
Right, that's part of it too. These foods, often engineered with just the right hit of fat, sugar, salt, they can trigger the brain's reward pathways intensely,
Leading to overeating,
Yeah.
addiction-like behavior.
Yeah, and potentially cognitive decline as a result. And interestingly, another study linked inconsistent sleep patterns variability in sleep efficiency to poorer cognitive function, too. It's all connected.
Sleep, diet, brain health. Makes sense.
And wearable tech. It's helping track this stuff now.
Mm-hmm. Devices continuously monitoring activity, sleep. These can be indicators of cognitive health, maybe even early signs of decline.
Then there's the bliss point concept. Food companies finding that perfect addictive combo.
Exactly. That precise formulation that makes unhealthy foods so hard to resist, leading to overconsumption and those negative brain impacts we talked about.
And it's not just cognition, right? There's a link to mental health, too. Depression, anxiety.
Yeah. Research suggests a link, possibly due to inflammation again, or just the lack of essential nutrients you need for good brain function in those diets.
So it can be done? Education? Policy changes?
All of the above, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Educating people, promoting nutrient-rich foods, maybe even policy-level changes to discourage the unhealthiest options. It definitely gives you pause before reaching for that bag of chips, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, let's shift focus again, this time to global nutrition challenges. Global Voices reports nutrition labeling and fortification in West African communities, bridging the gap for adolescent health.
A really important issue. Malnutrition there is a serious problem, especially for teens.
And clear nutrition labels and fortifying foods. These are key strategies.
Absolutely. Clear labels help people make informed choices, and fortification, adding vitamins and minerals back into staple foods, directly tackles common deficiencies. But there are challenges.
Like what? Getting everyone to use the same labels, making sure people understand them.
Exactly. There's often a lack of standardized rules across different countries in the region, and consumer awareness about how to read and use the labels can be low.
But fortification is having a positive impact, adding things like iron and vitamin A.
Yes, research shows it's helping improve adolescent nutritional health, addressing some of those key deficiencies.
And science is helping here too. Biofortified crops.
Mm-hmm. That's an exciting area, breeding crops like cassava or maize to naturally have higher levels of essential nutrients.
Because malnutrition in teens, it has long-term effects, right, on their health, their future potential.
Huge long-term consequences, not just for their own health, but for the economic potential of their communities too.
Are international organizations involved in helping?
Yes, they play a big role, providing technical support, funding, helping to get these labeling and fortification programs off the ground.
And ultimately, better labeling empowers people.
That's the goal. Giving consumers in West Africa the information they need to make healthier choices for themselves and their families. It's a reminder of how connected food, health, and global efforts really are.
Okay, finally, let's just touch briefly on the art and science of persuasion. Exchange Form Media has this headline, Marketers' Clockwork, How Brands Are Syncing Ads to Consumer Moods and Moments.
Wow, hyper-targeted advertising.
Pretty much, but actually, let's start with a slightly different but related point from the research. It mentioned potential health risks with synthetic ingredients in cosmetics, like triclosan.
Oh, right. Potential links to endocrine disruption, even carcinogenesis. Makes you really scrutinize those labels.
It does. And that connects, in a way, to the main point from Exchange Form Media. Marketers are using our behavioral data, real-time analytics.
To figure out when we're most receptive?
Exactly. Timing ads to sync with our likely moods or what we're doing at that moment. It's all about getting better engagement, better ROI, by being super personalized with the timing.
And there's that system for cosmetic ingredients, INCI, meant to provide transparency.
Right, the international nomenclature of cosmetic ingredients, supposed to standardize how ingredients are listed. And research even mentions potential benefits of natural stuff, like essential oils from certain pine trees for cosmetics.
So back to the ads. Real-time data helps brands tailor content to what we're doing right now.
That's the idea. Making marketing incredibly dynamic and data-driven, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much is your online activity influencing not just what ads you see, but when you see them?
Definitely something to be aware of.
We also had a couple of other, maybe more technical, but still important points pop up in the research.
See it?
One was about pension funds. Research by Helena Acarino highlighted that while having lots of members helps spread out certain investment risks,
Diversification, yeah.
there's still this systematic mortality risk. Basically, the risk of people living longer than expected. That needs careful management, especially for smaller funds.
Right, longevity risk, a big factor in pensions.
And the other point tied back to our very first topic, the baby SIPPs.
Ah, full circle.
Yeah. Research reiterated that families can really boost their overall financial health by actively thinking about their kids' future earning potential and security when they make decisions about money now. It all really does connect.
Absolutely. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today, from financial planning for infants
Yeah.
to the global food trade, retirement worries, the impact of remote work, how junk food hits the brain, targeted ads,
Yeah.
all pulled from those insights on consumers.app.
Thanks so much for taking this deep dive with us today. It's genuinely fascinating just how interconnected all these different parts of our lives really are.
It really is. And it just highlights why it's so important to stay curious, and think critically about what this made.
So, thinking about everything we've touched on, all these trends and insights,
Right.
what seemingly small, everyday consumer choice do you think might have the most far-reaching consequences down the line? Consequences maybe we aren't even fully seeing yet.